Welcome to this afternoon's session of CivEx, the Arizona Civic Exchange, a program of the Arizona Center for Civic Leadership at the Flinn Foundation. I'm Ann Lassen, Vice President for Scholarship and Education Initiatives. The reason I'm welcoming you rather than my colleague Don Wallace, who leads civic leadership at Flinn, is that today's CivEx is focusing on an initiative involving several of our Flinn Scholars, the Luminosity Lab at Arizona State University. It's a great opportunity to bring together two of our programs. You might be asking what the Luminosity Lab has to do with public policy and our shared civic life, and why it's relevant to civic leadership. As you'll learn in this afternoon's session, the staff and students you're going to meet are working precisely at the intersection of several really important public policy questions. What are the skills that a modern workforce needs? What is the purpose and scope of a university? How can university students contribute right now to the economy and partner with business? And what kinds of challenges are ready to be solved by creative thinkers, given the support to experiment across disciplines? With that, I'll turn it over to the Executive Director of the Luminosity Lab, Mark Knopfel, who will share more about the lab and today's speakers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you for everyone who joined us today. I'm just very excited for the opportunity to tell you more about the Luminosity Lab and the incredible work that our students are doing. Before I start, I want to give you a little bit about my background and really the origin story of Luminosity. Myself, I was born and raised here in Arizona. Arizona has always been really important to me. I actually was born and raised in South Tempe, right down the street from ASU, and would end up attending ASU for my undergraduate degree and was very active on campus. My junior year, I was actually the student body president for ASU's Tempe campus. And later on, I'd go on to be appointed by the governor to sit on the Arizona Board of Regents as the student regent. I think as most of you know, the Arizona Board of Regents is the governing body for the 3 public universities in the state. And that really gave me a chance during grad school to really understand the university systems, to get to know the students, to get to know President Crow and others, and really form a great relationship there. And I had always thought I was going to go into tech. I had done my internships in Silicon Valley. I had the job offer lined up, and I was literally 2 weeks from like moving out and taking the offer I had when it was actually President Michael Crow who pulled me aside as president of Arizona State University. And he was really obsessed with this idea of skunk works. And so I think we're going to ask a question of how many people know that term. I didn't even know the term when we had spoken about 4 or 5 years ago. But this idea of skunk works, it actually originates from Lockheed Martin in the World War II era. They were really responsible for creating aircraft for the war. And it was really important to create these innovations in a timely fashion. It's very hard to do. And so one of the really best designers of the time who had worked there, Kelly Johnson, when at some point he was frustrated with the bureaucracy of the organization and just felt like it wasn't structured in a way that was allowing to them to innovate. And he went to the leadership of Lockheed Martin and said, look, if you want innovation done on time, under budget, you need to like remove all bureaucracy. You need me to allow me to go and really build a culture, hand select some people from the organizations. We're going to isolate ourselves and we'll get you these aircraft. And so they ended up calling this group Skunk Works. And over the years, they've created some of the most innovative aircraft of all time, from the SR-71 to the stealth bomber. And today, a lot of people are trying to emulate that model. I think a lot of people are familiar with Google X Labs, which they had done the early, work on autonomous driving vehicles. And these groups really, they sit within a larger organization, but they're able to work on more moonshot projects and cutting edge research. And they're really given great agency and freedom to do that. And so really, that was the design consideration. President Crow asked me, he said, look, you've been at ASU, you're 24 years old, you're recently out of school. We want you to direct this lab, found this lab, and really create it so that we can, hand select some of our best students and really give them the agency to identify unmet need in society, and then go through the full process of actually designing, developing, and deploying those solutions. And so 4 years ago, we began this effort, and it started with a group of 15 students, a lot of them who were Flinn Scholars. And I think that's one of the things too. I think when we say we hand select our best and brightest students, A big part of this, it's hard to explain, right, to people. It's not a GPA. Sorry, my dog's barking. It's not really GPA that we look at. I actually think for those of you who are involved with the Flinn Foundation, whether you're scholars or fellows, it's easier to understand that because, we're looking for obviously people who are academically really excellent at what they do. But we're looking for students who really want to change their local environment. They want to change society and they want to stay up all night building things and have a passion for that. And once we were able to build a core catalyst of those students, the group's really grown organically over the years. I think, every year we engage about 50 to 100 students who come together really around this mission. It's really, there's entrepreneurship programs, but I think what's different about Luminosity, rather than just trying to find something that might be able to make revenue, we're really focused on large scale societal impact. And we really focus on areas such as healthcare and energy, and education, and trying to find what are the biggest problems in those space and how can we address those. And so I think today, through our portfolio of our projects and our students who lead these projects, this will start to make sense. So more formally, in terms of our vision statement, our vision is really to establish a new model of discovery and innovation that's relevant to the 21st century, and one that's driven by a lean interdisciplinary group of exceptional scholars. They're really within the university environment. They fuse their youthful spirit, their intellectual prowess, and their business acumen, and they leverage their position within the university to take risks and produce radical innovations capable of impacting society. So we're really grateful to be part of ASU, and at the end of the day, ASU is really giving these students that freedom. We don't, by design, involve faculty directly in our projects. All these projects we pursue really are from start to finish led by our students, and it truly gives them that agency to feel ownership of those projects. And as you'll see, it's really yielded some phenomenal outcomes for us. I think the part that makes the lab the most unique is really the diversity of disciplines that we engage. So you can see from this graphic, kind of the breakdown of different disciplines we have in the lab. So we're very a technical group. We obviously have a core set of engineers, of data scientists, of computer scientists that allow us to build, that have that toolkit to be able to rapidly prototype. And then that's augmented with students from design, from business. We have a team of law students and public policy students. And we truly believe that any project that's going to impact society, anything that'd be worth pursuing, requires all of these viewpoints. You can't ever really find success in something just focusing on the technical side. And so, I think what you'll see in our portfolio is the success has really come from us engaging students from a wide set of backgrounds and being able to tackle these projects from all angles. And so I think in terms of starting to talk about our portfolio of the projects, I think the first one will really solidify that concept. And this is some of the work we had started to do during the pandemic. At ASU, it was really interesting. Last year, we had taken a break for spring break. And all our students went off, and then during the spring break, we'd moved to remote. And so it's kind of like the last time we had seen each other in person. And I remember kind of setting up the first Zoom call for the lab after the break and not knowing how it would go. I didn't know if people would feel discouraged or want to take a break. And we got on that call and we had like 50 students who were just ready to do something about the pandemic. And we kicked off a portfolio of projects that you'll see, but one of them was something called the PPE Response Network. And what this was, it was a digital platform that allowed the facilitation of allowing medical providers to state what their PPE needs were. I think as all of us know, the supply chain at the time was backwards, and small groups, big groups, people couldn't get access to the PPE they needed. And at the same time, there were so many makers in the state of Arizona and throughout the country that were using 3D printers and sewing kits and rapidly manufacturing this PPE. And I think what the students noticed is it was an ad hoc process of trying to facilitate this. You had people calling hospitals, trying to figure out what their needs were, who they should drive it to. And you had hospitals working with different entities to try to figure out who they should declare what their needs are. So this platform really solved both of those issues. And it was something that was designed, developed, and deployed within a 3-week time period of a group of students, which was really a phenomenal effort. And in the early weeks of the pandemic, it was able to produce over 15,000 pieces of PPE, all given on a volunteer basis. And so at ASU alone, we had established like over 200 3D printers to use towards this effort. Our students had operationalized a logistic effort for people to come in as volunteers and put together the PPE and help ship it to those in need. And it was something, well, obviously there was a software component to it, technical component to it. So much of the success of that was around the public policy of it, around the legality of giving people PPE that wasn't, that was rapidly produced, and all the liability around that. And really the partnerships we were able to form with these medical providers to get that done. And so I think it's a really great representative of a project. And then, more on the hardware side, I'll pass it on to Nick Dave to explain what we've done there.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nikhil Dave, or I go by Nick as well. I'm a junior here at Arizona State University studying neuroscience and innovation in society. And I myself, actually, as a Flinn Scholar, was planning on going to U of A. And this is just a funny little side story. I was planning on going to U of A. And just a couple of days before, and I'm sure we'll remember this, I met Mark, was told of this Luminosity Lab, and it was about 24 hours until I kind of switched my mind, decided that I wanted to give this a go. And it's been, one of the best experiences of my life, if not the best. And so with that, I'd like to talk today about these sterilization systems. During COVID-19, when we realized that there was significant strain on the supply chains associated with PE, both gowns, protective gowns, but also primarily N95 were at risk. And so if you might remember, in March, April, May, and June, there was a significant shortage across the country. And we realized were several ways in which people could go ahead and sterilize N95s for reuse at a mass scale. So we're talking, thousands of masks at a time in a system that costs over $100-some thousand to build and takes over 6 weeks to build, which you can imagine during a pandemic is not an optimal situation. And so what we sought out to do is develop these modular sterilization devices that use similar or the same technology as these large scale ones did, but we're on a much smaller scale. And so we could give these devices to clinics in need across the valley who only had 5 or 10 N95 masks that they were constantly recycling to continue providing care to their patients. And so we designed these 2 sterilization systems, one with using vaporized hydrogen peroxide and the other using ozone gas, from off-the-shelf, kind of readily available parts that were not really going to hinder the supply chain that was already at strain during COVID-19. And I think this project largely came together, again, through a very interdisciplinary team. I mean, within this small team for the sterilization systems, we've got multiple different types of engineers as well as designers. And then even myself, which I'm neither of those, kind of more on the business development. I think that kind of bringing this team together, we were able to identify, again, what the most pressing need was in our community at the time, and create some sort of novel and relatively innovative way to do it. And then the last thing I'll mention about these sterilization systems is, of course, when you're building something new like this, and it's something that's going to be implemented in a healthcare field, it's critically important to have this system scientifically validated to ensure that it's doing exactly what it needs to be doing, nothing less for sure, and also nothing more that might harm N95 filtration efficiency. And so, of course, given our position within ASU, we were able to leverage connections and partners that we had at the Institute, and even across than ASU, even at connections that we had at U of A Med School, for example, to kind of source help where we needed, and to get this project fully complete in the short, 3-month time scale we developed these systems. So that's a little bit about this project, and yeah, I'll back.
So moving on to the next project, basically this same team has been working with the XPrize Next Generation Mask Challenge, which is a huge challenge with $1 million prize purse, really focusing on reimagining face masks, all for the purpose of getting more people to wear face masks. Also, I realized I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Katie Pascavis. I am a sophomore studying mechanical engineering and global health at ASU, and I am a Flinn Scholar of 2019. So I've been working with Nick, John Patterson, and other people on our team to do this, and we've had a great time working with 3M and Lidl to create what we call the Flow Mask, which is a comfortable and breathable mask with similar to N95 filtration efficiency. We are currently in the top 5, and stay tuned because they'll be announcing more soon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shakibat. I'm a senior here at Arizona State University studying business, global politics, and supply chain management. On the topic of COVID-19 relief, one of the projects we came up with was the Forks for Families initiative. So we saw a giant need. We saw families not being able to really access food due to food deserts and the added complexities due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we decided to partner with the Mesa Public School District, United Food Bank, and the Food Supply Chain Coalition Initiative to create this new type of way to help out families. So with Forks for Families, the pilot program, which is going to help 70 families and is starting next week, will really, instead of having families go directly to food banks, we ease the burden of them by delivering it to locations closer to their homes. That way, if they can get food within walking distance. And through this initiative, we hope to really engage people and let them know what resources are available to them through their schools, through their local food banks, and really make an impact on a local level. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nathaniel Ross. I'm a sophomore at ASU. I'm studying biology, applied quantitative science, political science, and history. And this project is about combating hate-based violence. It is partnered with the McCain Institute, who is putting together this campaign with a bunch of different schools, all creating different tools or initiatives to help end this problem. And what our team did was we had conversations with actual former members of hate groups to kind of determine what sort of program would have helped them prevent them from going down the paths that they did. What we found were some common themes like isolation, negative influences, and a desire to find a community. Those were all a part of their stories of why they ended up in the groups that they were in. And so what we decided was we created a platform called All Schools. And it's designed to kind of promote engagement and empowerment of the students through formation of school clubs and organizations. We use surveys to kind of gauge student interest as well as faculty interest to provide an interactive platform for administrators to better know what kind of what their students' needs are. And we are now in conversations with 2 high schools and a school district to implement our tool next semester. And we really look forward to building more educational connections in the future to help bring together these school communities, especially in a time where isolation is going to be a bigger problem than ever.
So our next project has been a passion project at the lab for many years, and many people have worked on it. Currently, we have an amazing team of female designers and engineers like Clara working on this. And the whole point is we've got this cute little robot named Kip. And we're creating the robotics platform in partnership with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and the Girl Scouts that we're planning on distributing to Girl Scouts to encourage them to get more involved in robotics, feel more comfortable about their self-efficacy in robotics, and just overall engage in STEM.
Hi, so my name is John Patterson. I'm actually a 2015 Flinn Scholar in my second year of my master's degree program. I'm studying electrical engineering with an emphasis on power systems. The Guardian Drones project, I'll first introduce it by saying that this is actually what got me into Luminosity Lab. I joined the lab my junior year of college and absolutely loved the environment. It was just this incredible, hands-on, dive in headfirst into the building experience type of place. And the Guardian drone got me really interested in autonomous vehicle and autonomous flight technology in general. And really what this project was aiming to do was to solve the problem of security for students on campus, as well as more broadly, first response involving autonomous flight and autonomous aerial vehicles or unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs. So the Guardian drone is actually basically a public service or public safety drone equipped with cameras, sensors, lights, and alarms that was originally designed to respond to calls for emergency calls on those blue indicator lights that are placed around ASU's campus with emergency call boxes. The idea being that the drone would provide a sort of stopgap between the initial placement of that emergency call and the eventual response by the ASU Police Department or other authorities. The whole point of this drone is really to provide a safety companion that can film whatever event's going on, provide a method for officers to communicate with the distressed person who's in that situation, and additionally to provide noise and light to potentially thwart any perpetrator involved. So a public safety type of device, and really scalable to a wide range of unmanned aerial vehicle applications. So we actually had 2 of these. This is the second unit that we ended up developing. A funny story involved with what happened to the first one that we can come back to some other time. But this one in particular, a lot of kind of next generation students coming to the lab that actually joined the lab much later than I did, got to then build this additional drone unit and really make it fleshed out and awesome looking like it is now. Lots and lots of advancements in the electronics on it, in the aesthetic design, and in the scalability of the manufacturer. So super fun project. I am absolutely in awe that I got to take part in building it.
Before we move, I just have to give a shout out, John. I saw that Sammy Meon's an attendee on this, and Sammy's a Flinn Scholar. I think many of you know him, and he was one of the founding members of the lab. And this was a project he kicked off and established. And so just want to give a shout out to you, Sammy, and thank you for your work. I will say before we move on, I mean, this is one of those projects too, when you have a bunch of engineers who are rapidly able to implement it and getting a working system. And sometimes can be frustrating because the policies, the FAA regulations don't allow you to actually operationalize it. But that was a big part of that project. Was really at the time the FAA was allowing 10 groups to pilot autonomous systems. And that was something we put a strong proposal in for that we didn't end up getting, but would have loved to be part of. And so it's one of those things, once again, having to tackle the problem from each angle is critical to the success. So. Cool.
So another project that I actually helped to found along with a number of other students who are interested in the power systems field is Project GridBase. Now, one of the big challenges that Luminosity and a ton of students in Luminosity identified that really affects people all over the world, even now in the US, is access to reliable electricity. And we actually wanted to develop a system that would allow people to build their own microgrids or have their communities build their own microgrids, leveraging technology that is mature but also widely accessible. So we've kind of honed in at this point on using the secondhand electric vehicle battery market as a principal means for storing energy. So we're actually, designing systems that incorporate, used EV batteries that might otherwise be destined for recycling or worse yet, the landfill, and repurposing them to be able to store energy when it's needed, to be able to then provide people the ability to effectively run off the grid for short periods of time if there's reliability issues with the mains electricity grid in their area. So what's pictured there on the screen is a DC to AC converter called a power inverter. And this one is designed for a typical household load. And it's basically a way to allow these batteries to run standard household equipment with really no other significant conversion steps required. It's again designed to coexist with existing AC infrastructure and power distribution infrastructure, and ultimately augmented by providing a way to store energy, to integrate renewables seamlessly into that system, and ultimately to be able to give people access to more reliable, higher quality electric power. And it's a really amazing hardware project. I have one of these inverters right here. And this is actually a newer generation of inverter. It's a bit different from the one on the screen. But again, this is like real hardware design, lots of students collaborating together to make these things and to test them. And it's very much both an interdisciplinary and very much a hardware-oriented, hands-on type of project. So that's GridBase.
Hi everyone, my name is Tyler Smith. I'm the associate.
Tyler had sent me a text just a second ago that he was having terrible internet. So he said if he dropped off, I'd take over. So I'll go ahead and explain this one until Tyler's back. But we had a really phenomenal opportunity about a year ago in the lab, at the Polytechnic campus, which at ASU is a campus that really focuses on applied engineering. Our goal at the time was to expand the lab from just really a presence on Tempe's campus to having a Luminosity presence at each of the university's distinct campuses, because each of them have different programs and different specializations. And so at the Polytechnic campus really allowed us to handle a lot of these more hands-on engineering type projects. And one of the opportunities that came up was that ASU had access to this Camaro that had been previously used on a sponsored project in which students had converted the vehicle to a hybrid electric vehicle. And once that project had concluded, we had made the request that, we would like to kind of take, maintain and own the project. And as soon as we received the Camaro, we asked the students, hey, what would you like to do? And the students really wanted to retrofit it and turn it into a fully autonomous vehicle, because at the time, ASU has access to maybe golf carts that are autonomous, but not a full-fledged vehicle. And, I think you see the vans driving around Arizona, but not many people do it to a car that can really drive at high speeds. And so we thought by doing this, we'd be able to conduct a lot of research in high-speed environments. And so I think in a period of 6 months, 6 to 8 months, these students were actually able to take that car and totally retrofit it to have autonomous capabilities and to be able to actuate. And we installed the LiDAR on the vehicle. And we have so many students, whether they're studying, computer vision and machine learning and software development, or if they're engineers, focusing on a system like this that is so complex is just such one that's so engaging. And obviously there's a lot of policy considerations around just the future of cities and what autonomous vehicles might mean for the future. And so I think for the lab, it was such a big success when this thing was able to first drive itself autonomously. And just being able to celebrate that was, I think means a lot to all of the students. And so this has been slowed down a bit by the pandemic. I think we've tried to reduce a little of the work we do, in the garage, but it's still moving, and we're hoping to start to leverage it as a platform, whether it's with corporate partners or local partners, be able to use this as a test bed for further research. And then Tyler was going to cover this one. Tyler, do we have you back before I go forward? I think we lost him. So Tyler, who's our associate director of the lab, he's phenomenal. He's been spearheading a lot of our engineering projects with the students. And so something that came about last year before the pandemic is this NASA Big Idea Challenge. So NASA will release these challenges that, like the XPrize, are very competitive in terms of students from all universities submitting for them. And so the challenge in this case was actually NASA's really curious for their next Artemis mission. They want to explore the permanently shadowed regions of the moon. And so we know there's craters in the shadowed regions, and it's very cold over there. So the assumption is that there might be ice at the bottom of these craters, and they would be really interested in analyzing that ice, really for the purposes of being able to take that and turn it into rocket fuel, and really use the moon as a launch pad for further missions. And so they sent this challenge out to students at universities all over the country and world and said, we want to see what system you would design. And so our students put together a proposal, and they really focused on, hey, let's do something that sure is advanced, but is foolproof. I think when you're going to the moon, you want to be innovative, but you also want to make something that won't fail. And so as you can see on the right-hand side, they just did their final submission. I think they find out in January if they won, but they were selected as one of 8 teams across the country to be finalists, where they were funded to create these prototypes. And so the system they designed is a spring-based catapult system, which would be attached to the lander. And what this would do is it would send a series of titanium covered probes into the crater. So it would send about 3 in, and then it would shoot one overhead. And that one would float for about 10 to 30 seconds, and it would establish line of sight so that it could then recommunicate back to the lander with the data received from the probes. And so, this, I think we found out we were finalists in December or January of last year. The pandemic hit right when we had received the funds to do the prototyping. So all of this work was conducted by our students during the pandemic. And so they've been coming in small groups to working on it. the supply chain for the materials on this project were affected. It's really unbelievable to see the students, so much of what they're learning is obviously like the technical work, the policy work, all aspects of it, but a lot of it is how do you deal with the world? And the world is complicated, and you have to acquire resources, and you have to work through the pandemics and conflicts. And so I think for the students, they'll tell you that, that's probably the biggest part of their learning experience. And I think really getting to a point where they were able to build a functioning prototype and submit it has been phenomenal. And then one of our design students who's studying augmented and virtual reality, I think the official program is digital culture at ASU, decided that to better help understand this system, when we submitted to NASA, they would create a VR experience of the moon to really show visually what the system looks like and how it works. And so his name's Dylan, and he worked with a team of students to create this VR experience that is super engaging. He did video casting in the lab to find voice actors and the whole 9 yards. And I know there's a video on YouTube. I think we can link on the chat so that you can watch it afterwards. But it's really just a phenomenal effort that has been conducted here. And like I said, we'll find out in January if the students win. And if they are selected for this, they'll actually work with NASA to build the actual version that would go on that mission, which is really exciting. So again, just big thanks to Tyler. Since Tyler wasn't here to introduce himself, he had actually been, he's also born and raised here in Arizona. He had gone to ASU for undergrad and his master's. He was a straight A student, really phenomenal student, very active on campus. And then he had went to work locally at PATT. And he had done a lot of consulting work, had worked on a lot of engineering projects. And then on the Guardian drone project, he had found out about it. And he would just come into the lab after work. So after 5 p.m., the early years of the lab, we would work at late nights. We didn't even have space. So we would just squat on campus. And he would show up at like 6 p.m. and just work through the night on that Guardian drone and really mentor and support our students. And I just thought that was phenomenal that he was spending his time. And, he had a, wife and kids. And so one day I told him, I said, hey, is there a chance we could make this your full-time job? And he seemed to like it, so you don't have to come in after hours. And so for the last 2 or 3 years, he's been working with us in a staff capacity and really has just been a great, the way we view our roles is really just providing mentorship. Our backgrounds are either in engineering or analytics or software development. So we like to teach around those skills. A lot of us had experience in industry and we're able to bring that back. But his mentorship has been essential. So thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Clara Hall and I'm a 4th year industrial design student at Arizona State University. While you've seen a lot of these projects have all been kind of related to hardware and technology, the lab has a lot of projects that are also more software and interface development, one of which is Shipshape. So Shipshape is a mobile app that uses elements of gamification to teach supply chain management skills to healthcare workers in developing countries. And what's really cool about this app is the fact that our team has been able to collaborate with a university in Ghana. So not only is our team made up of students in the lab, but we also collaborate with some faculty in the supply chain management department at ASU. People from USAID have actually also been part of the team, and in addition to students at that university. So in the last year, we've been able to travel to Ghana and work one-on-one with some of the students and faculty at the university there, which was just amazing. And then we've also been able to go out and test the app within the community, interview some of the local healthcare workers there, and just really get a better understanding of how we can tailor to their needs and the needs specific to that area and region. So the app is actually available on the Google Play Store and the Apple Store. So if anyone's interested, feel free to download it and give us your feedback, and we would love that.
Great. I'll actually take some time here to really explain. So, the way we view Luminosity's portfolio is twofold. Like I explained, we really started more as a skunkworks type lab. The lab was actually top secret at the time. We really didn't talk much. We didn't want people to even know the lab existed. We just wanted to focus on building cool things. And the initial portfolio of projects is really similar to these projects you've been seeing. We really told the students, hey, you can pursue anything you want. we received some strategic funds from the university, so we wouldn't have to go after grants per se. We really could pursue anything that had a need. And you know, a lot of times with grants, you're really pursuing something that an agency says is important for the future. It really doesn't give a chance for our young, bright minds to be able to dictate what they believe that is. And so it was really this unique opportunity for the students to be able to do that. And over the years, I think as many people know, ASU has so many different corporate partners that come by the institution, and Luminosity became kind of like a stop on these tours for companies to come see. And I think it started with Starbucks. Their executive suite and their CEO had visited, and they came by the lab one day, and they just saw these students and all these projects, kind of how you're saying now. And they were just fascinated by the model and what these students were able to produce. And one of the things they asked us was, you know, if we gave you some funding, could we do some open-ended innovation with the lab? You know, we have problem statements, but we don't know how to solve them. And while we have hundreds of employees, like we need bright minds, young minds like this. And it really became this model that we've done over the last 2 years, in which we'll do corporate sponsored partnerships, which a company will come to us, not really with a defined you know, thing they need built, but high level problem statements, things that, you know, and they might be moonshot projects, but they really want a team of students to figure out what the solution would be and then how to build and develop it. And it's really been a very fun aspect of our portfolio. And I think it's evolved over time. We tended to do like one-off projects. You know, we'd focus on one problem statement, scope out the work and complete it. But that's kind of outside of the way we work as a lab. So lately, we've been really focusing on actually launching innovation labs on behalf of companies. So essentially replicating this Luminosity Lab model, building a tailored team of interdisciplinary students and having them, while they still reside in our lab and support us on our overall efforts, they really focus on driving innovation to these companies. And so the one we just launched recently is with Bank of the West. And we have this now stationed in ASU Skysong building. It's just north of campus. And this is really a great way that the Bank of the West, they bring in their best stakeholders, their best executives to really articulate the different problems they have. You know, these might be technical problems, design problems, policy problems, and it gives our students a chance to be able to rapidly prototype different solutions to them. I think most recently they've built two things. One's a customer 360 platform that allows Bank of the West to understand their customers more and better leverage their data for customer understanding. And the second is actually a total redesign of their mobile app. They use a third-party vendor for their app and they're not very happy with it. So the students, it was cool because, you know, they're trying to target that age market. And so our students were able to build a mobile app that meets all their functionality, all their requirements, but is designed for, you know, millennials and really their target group. And we're able to do that using more modern frameworks such as React Native and Node.js. And these are things where we'll build the initial MVP, we'll prove out the concept, and then once that's done, we'll transfer it to the company for them to take that to further maturity. And it's really great because what this allows us to do is establish a pipeline for talent, which benefits the companies we work with. They're always looking for talent, but it also benefits our students. I think a core thing of the lab, you know, the reason it started is because, you know, President Crow, myself, you know, we really don't see age. You know, I think a lot of people like to see age. And so, you know, when you go into the workforce, a lot of the times, if you're not at a startup, if you're at a big corporate, sometimes they say, okay, you're just out of college, so we're going to give you this position and you're going to work on this one thing. And I think students today, they want to be treated like consultants and leverage all of their skills and be able to work on these things. Once they've been in an environment like they are now, they want to continue that on. And so I think what we've seen when we work with corporate partners is that they're treated like consultants. I mean, they're working directly with executives and they really are given great agency and, hey, please solve our problems. And I think that's really empowering for the students. And a lot of the times our students will say no to like their dream jobs in Silicon Valley that they wanted to go to, maybe some of the bigger names, to go to companies that they engaged with during their time in Luminosity, because they know when they go there, they might be continuing the work they had started, or they might be viewed in a similar manner. And so we really do like, you know, this portfolio that we've been developing, and we're trying to be diverse in that regard. So there's a bank here, you know, we've worked with Starbucks, we've worked with groups like Phoenix Children's Hospital. And so, you know, any entity that aligns with these areas that we want to focus on, that's really the ones we're trying to target. And so this was a great partnership before the pandemic started. You know, once again, instead of a corporate partner, ASU, you know, is also trying to build their relationships with universities across the country. And so Lane College is a school in Jackson, Tennessee. It's a historically Black college. And their president had visited the lab in a similar manner to maybe a corporate would, and just saw what the students were doing and was really fascinated by the model and thought that that was the type of environment they would love for their students to be in at Lane College. And they're a smaller institution, maybe 2,000 students. And I said, why not? I said, let's find some project. We'd love, we're a lot of times we're focused on impacting our local area. How can we impact your local area? And so for them, they actually had on their campus a designated opportunity zone, and they had a kind of a rundown gas station that was, was no longer functioning. And their dream was to take that and repurpose it into a student center that could really provide their students with some student worker opportunities, but also resources for them. And so we actually got some of our architecture students together, our design students together at Luminosity, and we connected with their business students and designers at Lane College to come up with an architectural design for that opportunity zone. And so that project's actually completed, and they'll soon begin work on that project, which is really exciting, I think, for people to see, an idea go to design to go to an eventual building that will really support that. For Lane College, they actually believe that development will greatly impact their campus. They're in a small area, and they actually believe it'll bring a lot of people to their campus, which is exciting. And this is another case where recently we got funded on a grant with the Starbucks Family Foundation. And we actually budgeted a team from Lane College to be part of that with us. And so we have 3 students there that will help us build a digital platform to connect small business owners with students who might want to use their skills to support them during the pandemic. And this is really the foundation for what we want to do with the future of the lab, where we take this model and we kind of implant it into universities across the country. And so those students at Lane College, those initial 3, are actually going to be the seed students that will become a Luminosity Lab at Lane College going into the spring semester. And we're very excited about that. And then another one of these expansions we've done recently, Rob will talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mark. And thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Rob Oliveri. I'm a part of the staff at the lab with Mark and Tyler. I'm originally from the East Coast, so Arizona by choice, and love it out here. And in my particular role, I focus on really any of our projects, either having to do with policy or aspects of projects that have to do with policy. I also recently finished my master's at ASU in science and technology policy. And then I also help support our efforts internationally. Clara had mentioned Shipshape, which was a 2-year partnership along with the ASU supply chain department, the business school at this university, KNUST, and USAID. That went extremely successful. It was actually a Gates Foundation Grand Challenge originally, and over 500 submissions, and we were one of 2 teams selected to get funding and produce a prototype for this. And that actually led to our ASU supply chain department, along with their extraordinary efforts to get a fairly large USAID grant to set up centers of excellence in Ghana with this university. And they reached out to us a few months ago about the opportunity, having their experience of working with the lab on Shipshape and a couple of other projects, about building a lab at KNUST in Ghana. And that particular university is it's rated as a top 10 university throughout the African continent, so pretty renowned and fairly prestigious. And so we've recently done a soft launch digitally over there with those students. We've got about 20, and they're just spectacular. And we've got a group of our students, many of whom are on the call, working, just getting to know and get a feel for some of the problems that their projects that already been working on themselves, and as well as discussing some of our projects that may be able to be useful over there or potentially test over there. So we're really hoping that this is, along with Lane College, one of our first big opportunities to expand the lab and really collaborate with ASU and this particular university to work together, solve problems, and hopefully have a much larger global impact.
So in conclusion, I mean, I think these last few slides really kind of give you an idea for the direction we want to go to as a lab, is really to scale our impact by taking this model across the world. And I don't know if I knew, like I said, I started the lab when I was 24 years old. I had just come out of grad school. I didn't have a PhD. Like, it was unheard of someone like me to run like a research lab. And I think that had its benefits, mostly because I was totally naive. I had never participated in a research lab. And it led me to build a model that I thought, from my intuition, my engagement with students would work and would be relevant to folks that were of similar age to me. And I just assumed that other universities would have models very similar. And it's really been interesting to see that it doesn't, exist. These student-driven labs don't exist. And so that's really a big reason why we want to scale this model and take it out. I think we've seen over the last 4.5 years, and just from these few exemplar projects, the amount of output that can occur just with students who want to stay up all night and change the world. And I think really all it takes is really giving the people agency to do that. And I think more importantly than anything, and I say it all the time, is really just the culture you develop. And I think we've developed just an incredible culture of the lab. At the end of the day, I could leave, it's not really the process or anything of the lab that we do. It's really the types of students we look for and the culture that has been built. If you ask any of these students, they feel like they're a family, and they develop relationships that I know will last a lifetime. I think the last 2 weddings I went to, Sammy included, you go and it's like people from the lab, it's like they're officiating the wedding, they're in the wedding party, and like half the tables at the wedding are lab students. And it's just been something that's beautiful to see. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for us as we start to scale this brand and concept to other institutions. The idea would be to build this massive network of talent across the country and really engage people in college and engage them in a meaningful way, and then continue that relationship past graduation. And I think we could build one of the strongest networks of talent. And for us, the call to action is, I know everyone on this call is similar in culture and mindset. And so, for us, we really just try to drive value. We try to impact our local area. We try to impact the world through our projects. So we would love to work with all of you. I mean, I've seen the list of people on this call, and you are all in positions of influence. And any of these projects that you've seen that might be interesting, please let us know. Please reach out. You see our email here. And it doesn't have to be an existing project. If there's anything you guys need to drive at your organizations, let us know. We have so many students that would be eager to help out. And we would love to scale the impact we're having specifically locally here in Arizona. So I thank you so much for your time. And I think right now we're going to go ahead and open for Q&A. So feel free to just submit your questions in the chat. I know a few had come in. So I can go ahead and start routing these. I think John Patterson, if you don't mind, if we can go back to the grid-based slide. Justin Pai had asked about grid-based. How does it manage load across the local grid?
Yeah, so one of the really cool things we've developed on grid-based is a semi-supervised load control strategy. So we actually can couple each load and each inverter with a controller that uses the voltage of the DC bus at its local location to make decisions about whether to continue operating that load or potentially to shed that load if there's a discharging battery situation. And because it's semi-supervised, we can remotely instruct these controllers to effectively change their threshold at which they will turn on and off if there is indeed the need for a load shedding design. So again, even if there's a loss of communication link, these controllers can be configured to continue running their previously assigned program logic, but on the fly, they can also be updated when communication is available.
Nate, Nathaniel, someone's asking you what gave you the idea for your group's project. So we can go back maybe to the McCain Institute slide.
Yeah, so really what we wanted to focus on was a lot of the tools that have been created, or the initiatives that have been created, were really focused on the symptom of people being in hate groups. We really saw that the root cause and the root problem was the disengagement from the community that they were in, the positive community, and this search for a community that would better like accept them, honestly. And so we wanted to flip that, try to treat the disease rather than the symptom. That's why we tried to focus on high school age students and building communities rather than trying to disengage people who are already in hate groups. And so that's kind of how we went on that. If Shaki's also on that project, so if he has anything to add, he can do that.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. So to go on what he said, through this project, we are gaining feedback from students directly. That way, administrators can better have an idea of what students are interested in, and then use that information to try and better the community. From our initial research studies, we found that in the group that we surveyed, a lot of students were able to feel connected to their communities, but they didn't realize how they could take action on their own to create student organizations and really take initiative in creating that community by their own actions for others. So hopefully utilizing this tool, we can kind of help schools know how to best serve the needs of their students.
Wonderful.
And in terms of grants for the competition, we are competing in the McCain Institute P2P peer competition. And so we got an initial seed funding of $1,000 for that competition. And as part of the competition, we are competing, submitting a report, and we could receive more funding based on that. But Mark, you can touch more on funding.
Yeah, in terms of the grants we go after, I think when it comes to our corporate sponsored portfolio projects, we work with a group at ASU within our knowledge enterprise, which is like our research arm of the institution. We have a corporate engagement group that actually helps facilitate those. And what they do is they really bring companies that have a partnership of any type to with ASU to the table. You know, there's a suite of services that ASU can provide, but anyone that expresses interest around leveraging students, around innovation, they'll come have a meeting with us. And then usually the staff, myself, will have that initial meeting just to understand the company and what kind of things they're looking into. And then usually we'll have a follow-up call in which we'll bring students to that call. And we'll really pick students that have expertise in the areas where it looks like the problem stands. And so we'll kind of facilitate that. And then from there, the students really just take those problem statements and they'll have a few internal sessions in terms of what would be a concept that might solve this problem. I think the biggest challenge of facilitating this is it's supposed to be open-ended innovation, but universities really like scoped work, right? They want to know exactly what you're working on and how long. That's why we're really trying to move to this more open-ended innovation lab concept. But it really is the students that are helping produce the concept that will then inform that statement of work. And so we tend to lead more on those with the corporate sponsored projects, but internally the projects, you know, the students have a process that we've established so that they can go from an idea they're interested in to, you know, chartering a project to then planning the project and then conducting the development of it. And so we use Agile, we use Scrum as like a project management. I think a lot of people are familiar with Agile. And so a lot of our students, they serve as the Scrum masters. You know, the students really get together and figure out what the backlog of work on the projects will be and really engage in that. And so they're really self-efficient in terms of taking on, you know, what they want to work on through, you know, in terms of the work tasks in that backlog. And we really kind of act as, the staff acts as like the project champions for those. And then the grants have really been student-led. I mean, those, you know, a lot of them have been these challenges and students will find one that they think is interesting, they think they could compete in, and they'll do a lot of the grant writing as well. And we really kind of just mentor around that. And what's cool is usually students don't get to engage with that at the undergraduate level. In research overall, I know that's changing. But once again, we don't care if you're a freshman, if you're a PhD student. I mean, we don't really see the age. And so I think it's a really great learning opportunity, especially for these students who are in undergrad and want to go off and do research and become PhD students, engaging them earlier in the process. I mean, we believe there's nothing these students can't do. And so we just let them run with it. And it's been working out for us. Let me see if there's other questions. I think we're going to wait for other questions to come in if there are any. One last thing I want to say while we're waiting for questions is just want to thank the Flinn Foundation. I can't emphasize enough. Most of the participants, from the lab here today, are Flinn Scholars themselves. A lot of the founding members of the lab were Flinn Scholars, and throughout the course of the lab, so many of our students have been Flinn Scholars. And I really think because what Flinn looks for in terms of a student and the personality and the culture and the drive of students is so similar, and we're so grateful for them providing those opportunities for them to come to ASU and study. And really, the foundation of our lab is built off a lot of the work of those students. And also the Flinn Foundation has provided us with grants on projects that we're very grateful for. So Nick, maybe do you want to talk about the grant you received on the sterilization system and kind of how you've been leveraging that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we were really fortunate to receive a couple of $1,000s from the Flinn Foundation for the work that we were doing around N95 sterilization. Really, that funding went to manufacturing more units that then we can get out to users within our community, allow them to test our units, give us their feedback so we can continue iterating on the products we're developing. But then beyond that, I mean, the funding has just been really helpful to continue making connections outside of, by creating more units, to continue making connections outside of the network that we've originally developed during COVID to determine where these projects could be used, whether it's during times like COVID-19 or even beyond that, eventually once COVID-19 does die down, how can we find some place in the medical supply chain in which these modular sterilization disinfectant solutions or even some of the parts that make up these systems might provide value in other places. So that's kind of where the funding has gone to, but it's been, a tremendous pleasure just having the opportunity to interface with the Flinn Foundation and to receive support for some of the work that has kind of come organically from the lab. So yeah, with that, of course, I should say thank you so much to the Flinn Foundation for that as well.
I think this will be probably the last question. Are any of the teams starting startups to scale the solutions? Yeah, they're in the process. I think, now that we're coming on like four years of the lab, I think the early years were really focused on identifying projects, building, getting to prototypes. I think last year and the year before, we really started focusing on like, hey, we've generated a lot of IP. We really should start focusing on where the endpoint is in the lab. At what point do we want to try to transition this, whether it's with a corporate sponsor, whether it's open sourcing some of the work we've done, or whether it's a startup. And so I think last year alone, in the last fiscal year, we had about 10 provisional patents on different types of projects. And so ASU helps us in terms of trying to generate interest, in terms of finding a home for those. And a lot of the times if there's interest, they'll support a spin out of the institution into a startup type endeavor. And we've had students spin out companies of different size and scale through the lab. But it's something honestly we'd love to do more of, and it's probably the thing we're the least good at, right? We're good at really identifying problems, designing, building, getting to prototypes. So for anyone on this call, I know a lot of you are entrepreneurs, a lot of you have started your own companies. If there's any mentorship or advice you could come in and these students are sitting there with IP. I mean, I think learning from you in terms of how to take that outside and really get it to a point where it can impact the world, I think would be really helpful. So once again, please feel free to reach out. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have been able to share some info on the lab, and we look forward to hearing from hopefully a lot of you. Great. I'll go ahead and pass it to Anne.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, and thank you to all of our panelists. It was really, really fun to just sit here and listen to the details about so many different kinds of projects. And I love Mark's description of the students, want to stay up all night and change the world. And that certainly does describe our Flinn Scholars. And we know a lot of other students at the 3 universities across our state. I'm sure that Dawn would describe her Flinn Brown Fellows similarly. And to Dawn and Sarah, thank you so much for your partnership in putting this together. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope that you enjoyed the presentation. This video will be posted on the Civic Leadership website. Thank you again for joining us and have a great afternoon.